Okay, welcome everybody to the Earthen podcast. Today, my honored guest is Jurgen Kleinwaetcher. Did I say that correctly?
Oh yeah, nearly perfect.
I took some German in middle school, so.
Yeah.
But Jurgen is a world famous inventor and, in my view, one of the key players in village scale power systems. He's a physicist and engineer, inventor, and he's come up with some very interesting village scale power systems that we're going to get into today. So welcome, Jurgen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Scott. And my position is that we all, and including you, with your wonderful buildings, exploring the possibilities in our world. So we are all inventors, and I think the honor should be given to the nature we observe, and we are lucky enough to find elements which hopefully will bring better conditions to this planet.
Well said. Yeah, we're just here for the earth, and we come from our soul comes from who knows where, but when I was a little kid, I just knew that I was here for the earth already, and so I tried to find an avenue to express that by doing natural building and bioarchitecture, because I see that as something that kind of a no-brainer that we can do that's creating a positive change in the world. And so there's a lot of positive cultural shift happening these days. Everybody knows that we need to care for the earth more and make some changes in the way we do things as humans on the earth. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now. Like you went to engineering school, I'm assuming, and you.
Yeah, I studied physics and astrophysics in France, in Grenoble. It's a wonderful town in the French Alps. So I was more skiing than going and studying. But but because for me it was always important to have this connection to nature. And I come out of family scientist. My father is a rocket scientist, and at this time he had his private institute in the Black Forest in Germany, and he was worldwide known to develop robots after his rocket time. Men-like machines. And when I finished my studies, I came in his lab, and I had the idea to go to solar because I met during my studies the prominent developers of solar technology in Algeria. This is a French colony, and became independent. And the French professors and engineers who did great work had to go out, and they came into a country which did not really accept their talents because France at this time was going to atomic energy, as you know. It's nuclear France, the goal. And so I wanted to propose my father, hey, we should go to solar. And he said, hey, son, it's the same thing I just wanted to tell you, because he came back at this time, we are now speaking very long time ago, that is beginning of the 70s of last century. And he came back from America, US, where he met year by year with his colleagues who built the moon rockets there. And the famous Werner von Braun, who was the engineering head, had told something which impressed me very much, because I would have thought all his vision for the future is to go to Mars, like Elon Musk today. And I liked what he said. He said, hey, why should we go to Mars before we don't take really care of our spaceship, Earth? And so my father said, I'm coming with the same idea. And so we started as the first, I think it was the first professional institution, private, of course, to investigate all our ideas in all the different possibilities we could see at this time in solar energy. And we became more and more excited, more and more like children playing with such, such waste possibilities, huh? Such abundance. And I was very proud then, a little bit later, when my father, who was very well known, in an interview to a big journal, they asked him, "Hey, professor, what do you think is the most important task for the coming ages?" And he said something I liked. He said, "Look, we all, inventors, engineers, everybody thinking about the future." I say it in the sense, his sentence were a little bit different. We are responsible for what we do. And as a solar energy, also our possibilities to develop everything we want, from the atomic bomb to something really beautiful, we need an inner director. And my inner director is a shame I have for me and engineers and developers of my generation, because we put so many things in the world and we are not able to master the fight against the hunger and misery of nearly half. Today, it's half of the population of this big satellite. So he said, and the sole solution for this, if you think deeply, must be solar energy and all the possibilities. Oh, that was a second statement.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I hear stories about the amount of expenditure in money in one day of a war would be enough to feed the entire world for a whole year, something like that.
Oh yeah, and even more, I think somewhat we are all this world politics. I'm not taking now a position of one or the other side, just observing. If I look really at this, I think, beautiful picture of Werner von Braun telling, hey, we are living on a beautiful satellite, and a satellite, an artificial one, the International Space Station, is very primitive against what we have. So, and what we do is fighting for, some people seem to be only happy if they get billions. What will they do with it? And then this leads automatically to the fight for what is claimed the limited resources of the earth. And this is justifying wars for oil, gas, minerals, and it's so strange. And we push this so highly up. Look at gas today,
Right.
as a resource which is really, we are in war for this terrible war. And seeing the sun, the photons, bringing over 10,000 times more energy every moment on our planet compared to the actual global need of all type of energies, not just electricity, heating, cooling, chemical energy, all this, 10,000 times more. And why are we not going in this? This is very strange. I will give you, when we speak a little bit more and you ask more questions, some responses, how I see this. But we were at the point where you said, if you take the money of one spent for one day of war, we could feed the whole humanity for 1 year. That's for sure too, but we can do much better. I think it was already Jesus Christ who said, if someone is hungry, don't give him a fish, give him a fisher net. So what we have to do is to bring our knowledge to the attention of those people who are now stated as being poor. In reality, they are the richest people of the world because they live in the south and they have up to 3 times more photons per time unit than we have.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you have more sunlight hitting a lot of places, and those
Yeah.
a lot of those sunny countries tend to be poorer.
And you know, if you look at the logics, why are we so rich? Germany, rich, America, still rich, others rich. Yeah. It started with one invention. It was in Scotland, was a steam engine. And
Mhm.
with one knowledge that under Scotland and England and Germany and France, you found so much coal. And then the knowledge, if you burn coal, you produce steam, and suddenly we were in the industrial age.
Mhm.
We didn't know that at this time it was not really known that uh, even if we consider the reserves of coal, they could, if we would use it today, despite the climatic effect we are going to speak, we would have for some 100 years. And we think, wow, that's a huge reserve. It's nothing, it's peanuts, because this is a side effect of the sun, who was shining for nearly 1 billion years in the carbon age over these big jungles. Only a very tiny portion of this radiation producing in intercepted by the living nature, by the leaves, producing biomass. And only a very small part of this biomass came under the earth without oxygen and transformed into coal, oil, gas. But it was, if I think you could say, what was a percentage of the energy falling this 1 billion, roughly 1 billion year on these jungles? And what was a percentage which was transformed in oil and gas and coal? Parts per millions. And so if today we say, oh, I have a fantastic Porsche engine, huh? I put in fuel, was coming from this, and now I have, wow, the best engineers could realize 40% of efficiency. That's true. That's not the whole story, because the energy carriers they put in was produced with parts of millions. So
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
always have to look at the whole chain. And then suddenly you see, hey, my Porsche is converting the energy which was originally from the sun with part per millions. It's another picture. And then you come and say, hey, now we have solar photovoltaic panels which are producing 20%, some of them even 40% for multi-junction cells, if you do it in America and also here. And the picture becomes different. But then comes the big um, controversy. Yes, but this is not constant. We need constant energy. Okay, nighttime sun is not shining. And in Germany, we may have months without sunshine. Again, different for those who are really considered to be poor. They have, in the best cases, nearly all over the year sun. Yeah. So it means we have to create storage. If we have storage, everybody will understand, hey, all the other energy sources are peanut. And so we have to speak about reasonable storages. And this is something very exciting. And we worked in our lab for this, and we have very nice developments which should be applied. And now, how should they be applied? I come back to your wonderful earth houses. Now, I always admire, of course, we have to be very pragmatic. what we are doing is to give a good life to people and freeing them from this terrible dependence from the fossil energies, which makes them poorer and poorer, which lets them work most of their life, mostly in jobs they would not like to do, but they have to do this job to earn the money to burn, to petrol and other things becoming more and more expensive. So this is strange. Huh? And
Yeah,
so,
we're all trying to
so
figure it out. Yeah, we're all on the same
yeah.
page, just trying to unlock this puzzle.
And coming again to your house, uh, I think we discussed this last time. If we look at the global range, the percentage of energy uh, used to produce habitat, general terms, houses, towns, and so 60% the hell, 60%. And if you look then in, one of the big players in is the concrete industry and as building materials. And then you look to the earth, it's the same gift as the photons. It's natural.
Yeah.
And you use it. And you have so many fantastic possibilities as you have developed. And I can see much more from our side. And therefore, we would like to come really, really in cooperation with you, sharing your knowledge with our knowledge. And if we can bring in these houses the elements to make them self-sufficient. Self-sufficient means we want to create the energies we need, be this electric or thermal, hot or cold, but we also want to produce water, which is becoming more and more a problem in this climatic change. So how can we win water even in a nearly desert out of the air and other things? And if we combine this and we find a way, coming to the social point, if I dream from a village, solar power village or solar adobe, solar earth house village. It's beautiful. And the people who build the house are now also enabled in this community to build their own energy systems. By the way, many of the technical containers, species for water, semi-permeable or permeable bases for other uses could be done by Adobe. And if we have at the same time the local source of concentrated light to produce out of this Adobe ceramic type style, we did already a big job. And then coming to the energy. Okay, now you would say, hey, if you speak today about solar energy, most of the people say this is photovoltaic. Photovoltaic is wonderful development, but wanting to suffice the need of the world only with photovoltaic is possible, but it is a monoculture and it cannot be produced in the village. Mm-hmm. So we got in our efforts, we studied a lot about photovoltaics and we built nice systems. And I'm not saying bad things about it. Beautiful. It should not become a monoculture. So we looked at this very old principle, which also came from Scotland, a stirling engine. The stirling engine was after the first engine we spoke about, invented in Scotland. A steam engine was an engine which didn't need water, steam under pressure, and storages for the steam, which worked with air. And this was the reason that the Scotch priest, Stirling, he was a priest. He had a brother who was an engineer, helped him a little bit. He said, the motivation at this time was, most people don't know, because they digged for coal to run the steam engines to become rich. As it didn't build very high systems under Earth, smaller, so they put children in. It was really terrible. And because many explosions of the steam engines, which pumped out the water, redundantly came into the mines, exploded. Many children. It says me it's an unstable connection, but I think we are still connected. Many children died. So the priest said, I have to invent an engine which can no longer. He invented the stirling. I personally have an objection, because if he was really a priest, I mean with compassion, he should have said first, no longer children in mines. It was a certain Mr. Marx who tried to do this. Okay, but we come back to the core. We intended and worked enough hard over long years to simplify the Stirling engine. By the way, could be built out of Adobe. That's something which is important. I would like one day to go with you there. Hopefully not far from now. But mainly at this time, the Stirling engine was fired at very high temperature. They took a little bit coal and put it under it and worked at 800 to 1000 degrees. And we wanted to have an engine which already runs at 100 degrees C or even less. And this is, we had to go in thermodynamics. So as physicists, we know a little bit about this. And the charm is that normally, if you want to optimize a technical system, it becomes more and more complicated. But if you have as clean source solar input, you can simplify it and it becomes better. The reasons for this is another story, but I can really tell this. And what I'm now really desperately hoping, that in the time where the electricity, which is a very positive statement, becomes very cheap with photovoltaics you produce in Saudi Arabia, electricity given to the huge amount of sun amount radiation, you are in the range of 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour in production. It's much cheaper than every other source, but with a limitation that you can build it yourself. And these engines, they have the capacity to do the same, even better in efficiency, but at the same time producing heat and could be produced locally. And this would give job to the people in the village. So coming back to this dream of a solar power village. You have seen we started doing things, for example, in Portugal, in Tamera, and it was very exciting. And I had a little lab where I did this. I have a Stirling engine running day and night, not with a sophisticated, and again, to be questioned, electric storage, like the Elon Musk's storages or others, as lithium ions, is beautiful, but it's high tech, cannot be mastered by someone just out of hot storage from a solar collector field. And we said, because everybody knows we can make hot water out of sunshine, there's nothing exciting today, but we always tried to bring elements together. So we said, hey, why wouldn't we develop a system with a second very important element for local autonomy is production of food. So we got very deeply into photosynthetic theories and had a lot of exchange with specialists. And all I can say here very shortly is that most people don't know that a plant requires only a smaller portion of the incoming light to grow, about 20% maximum, but in the right wavelengths of the solar spectrum. So why couldn't we produce some sort of optical filters which in the heat, which is the radiation which is required for plants, but which takes out as heat the 80% not required. And if you put this heat then to the storage I just broadly described, and you put a Stirling engine on it, you can produce day and night electricity.
Exactly. And
and
you
again,
call this your envelope power greenhouse, is that right?
yes. And the
So
more
just
you,
for the audience, because I've studied this stuff for years and I follow your work very closely and I understand the technical aspects, but I think people are not aware that, I mean, you're using a light filtering uh, focus system inside of the greenhouse wall. So it's taking out the spectrum of light that the plants don't use, and it's focusing that as basically like waste heat, and you're focusing it and capturing it in capillaries of vegetable oil. Is that right?
yes, this is one possibility, but meanwhile, we developed much nicer ones.
Right. Or other
based,
options.
basing on minerals. Yes, that is, that is an objection often pronounced against inventors, as you said, we are inventors and by passion. And as I said, a little bit like children, seeing every time something else, but nevertheless focused. We want to get independence in the villages, in the terms I said. And therefore, it's a little bit contradiction to the ongoing system, how it works, the money system.
Mm-hmm.
You are a very good inventor if you invent one thing. It doesn't matter if it's the best or not, but it must make money fast and big production volume. So, and then you are happy because maybe you get some percentage. That's not at all what we want. We want to combine the things. And it makes
Yes.
so much sense in such an envelope greenhouse. The more you go in, the more you like it, because the plants getting the right light are no longer stressed. Because if they get the full light, evidently they grow under full light. You must go outside. In Oregon, you have beautiful nature. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
You could say, hey, you are telling us a story. They need the full light. But you didn't ask the plant. If we would understand the language of the plant, would say yes, but you know, all this part, if we speak as solar spectrum, I speak now in micrometers from 0.3 micrometers to 3 micrometers, yes, 30 micrometers, 300 micrometers, sorry. 3 micrometers to 300, all beyond 75 micrometers, as the infrared part, is only stressing us as plants. And therefore, we have green leaves, and the green leaves absorb, unfortunately, this infrared radiation to become hot. And me as a leaf, if I would speak, I say, hey, you should know, I can make only photosynthesis unless my temperature is not overgoing typically 35 degrees centigrade.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a green paper in the sun heats much higher. So we have to cool ourselves. And what does it mean? Most of our energy in our plant organism is now needed for pumping water and for evaporation cooling. And this results also that in the fact that if you are at a scarce land, you don't have too much water, you need a lot of water. And then because you need also the CO2 to make photosynthesis, so you need the carbon out of it, you have to open lids in the greenhouse and the precious water vapor is dissipating outside. You have to go. And if you do this in the right way, the plant needs less water, has more of its inner power to produce better plants, which you can see are stable. And then, of course, you start thinking, okay, in a holistic Earth system, it's no harm that the evaporation from woods, for example, is going in the atmosphere and it is coming in the large circle of weather events and coming back one day. But now we are in a situation where less and less rain is coming in. And so we should imitate the large global circle of water evaporation, recondensation in this little frame. And that's what we can do, not only in these greenhouses, but also in your earth houses. So and we can use specifics of the earth and of the adobe. We can tailor this to make perfect not only climatization, but also re-winning the precious water driving this cycle.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I didn't realize that because of your light filtration, you're actually able to keep the moisture in the building and then recycle it. That would be beneficial for the plants, obviously, and for how much water we need to collect or store.
Yeah, but you know, Scott, up so far we spoke about this abundance of radiation falling on the Earth, about 10,000 times more as a need, we said. But there is another source, which is just the opposite, which is nearly not used. And this is the black body selective radiation of the soil towards the sky nighttime. You wonder if you surely observe if you are in a typical semi-arid climates, daytimes it's becoming terribly hot,
right?
And nighttimes it can really go down. And this has to do with the fact that we are entombed, the Earth is entombed by the outer space, which is at minus 272 degrees centigrade. And we are not frozen to an ice ball because we have this atmosphere. And this is, if we would not have the atmosphere, the Earth would be an ice ball, finished, and would never remelt. But now, one thing is beautiful, is that we have two windows in this atmosphere. It means regions of transparency. One is evident for the solar spectrum. If it wouldn't be transparent, we wouldn't be here. And then comes a lot of absorption through the gases in the atmosphere. And then comes a second window, which is between 8 and 14 micrometer. It's called the second atmospheric window. And now I'm not going to bore you, but if you know what radiation means and what it means if you have the capacity to radiate between 8 and 14 micrometer through the atmosphere, the better it is, the more you are in an atmosphere which is not filled with water vapor. So in the tropics, not very good, but in the arid zones like Sahel or California, maybe also Oregon places, it works. So you can cool down a radiator, which is very simple.
Mm.
We should, again, you can build, and you can build most of it out of Adobe. I would like to teach you this.
Yeah. Well, this
And
is just so fascinating. I love how you're connecting it with the Adobe as well, because they
yeah,
really are the same in the fact that, you know, what you're building and what I'm building is something to empower people globally that they themselves can build and repair. They don't need any experts there to come and repair it. It's not like your you know, super complicated electronics and stuff like that. It's things that simple, you know, basic mechanic can repair. And I just
yes,
love that. And in a way, like you said, it's like we're giving something to the world. It's just, it's not the thing that's going to create a huge profit necessarily, but it is what needs to happen. And you know, when you look at the amount of abundance that's all around, like in the earth itself, earth materials for earth building, it's ridiculous. And the stuff is so strong and it's so easy to work with. And I've always thought like, wow, we have to use this. It's quite obvious, and many people know. And the same is true of the solar energy. It is just, I believe there was one interview where it was like an Aboriginal guy was sitting on a panel with you, and he said, "Yeah, we're living in an area of complete uncontrolled abundance. The amount of sunlight hitting the area is just, it's so much
uncontrolled,
abundance,
yes.
but we're not harnessing it. So we need to move toward harnessing the abundance. And when we do that, we combine that with the earth building and the solar energy. It's a winning combination for sure. And like you said, you can actually construct a lot of the structural elements of what you need can come from the local building site. You need a little bit of metal, I understand, right, to build your stirling engine and
Yes, for sure. You know, we need sometimes metals, it's clear, and we are not condemning this. But we see, it's more what I just explained, that we, besides the source of energy, we have a sink of energy. So we produce daytime heat or whatever we need, light, and nighttime cooling. And both can be stored.
mm,
So you have a cold storage. And now you could say, "Path, that's not very sexy in our time. That's not high tech. We have to go to semiconductors producing, cooling, and sophisticated engine." It's true, you could think like this. But it's a question uh, also of a certain modesty everybody should have if he is not considering him as the center of the world. We are, I think, as humans, first we had to survive, which we managed up so far. Not very long time, by the way, compared to the dimensions of the nature around. And but and we have the tendency and the curiosity to understand things. I think it's beautiful. But we also have the tendency to make out of this curiosity elements to produce them, which are called high tech. I'm not by in principle against high tech, but the high tech functions. And we only produce by big, large investments. Take semiconductors. You will not be able to produce a semiconductor photovoltaic company if you don't have some billions in your pocket. And automatically, if this is the aim, we produce, it's logic, large, who produce nicely and who want to get back their investment, which is also normal. Huh? And therefore they sell. And the first is interested, the parties who are really interesting for big companies are, of course, those who have money. So calling the global north. Huh?
mm,
And but those who really need it are in the global south. And therefore, one could say the following: if we if we agree that, you know, people speak about solar power stations. In
Mhm.
principle, this is the wrong word. The solar power station is the sun itself. It's a power station. And this is an extremely high-tech system. We cannot reproduce it on Earth. It's a fusion reactor, which will live for the next 4 billion years.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it has a wonderful capacity. Unlike a big high-tech company produced by us, we would have a power line and we would have a meter at the end of the power line and would say, Scott, yeah, sorry, but we have to raise our price of electricity by 20%. And by the way, next year's again.
Yeah. You pay whatever we say. Yeah, exactly.
And the sun sends photons, and there's no bill associated. It's very interesting.
Hmm.
Could be seen philosophically. What is this?
Right.
And it is coming to our attention. We don't take enough attention of the beautiful nature around us. Because if we go in a leaf is a wonder system. It is more high-tech than every high-tech we have on
Right.
the
Yeah, I love
conversion.
this concept you talked about before. You're contrasting the classical high tech and the eco
Yeah,
high tech. And the classical high
sure.
tech is like all this electronics and things are, like you said, it's very seductive, and they're putting it in advertising a lot. So people think when they think of high tech, that's what they think of. But the eco high tech is what we're talking about. It's the earth building and the solar heat capture and the stirling engine, which is actually many times more efficient and copies more the patterns of nature in the way that it's stacking functions. You're achieving
Yeah,
multiple goals at the same time for an incredible efficiency.
true, because they are holistic systems. We are not producing just electricity. We always produce simultaneously heat. And if you look for 100% input, we are not producing only 20% electric. We are producing the rest in heat, which is useful, but only useful if you produce it very near to the customer, so to say, in a house.
Mhm.
If you have a big power station, I said in principle wrong name, there are antennas we are developing for
Right.
the photons.
Well, I know
Um,
they waste so much electricity now. They send it from state to state and they send it on these wires, and like how much money do we spend also just building the infrastructure to have all the telephone poles and all the wires, or even in Europe they bury all the electrical cables underground. I mean, so much work to build all that infrastructure, and we could
yes,
have take that money and just build localized power generation, right?
yeah, you are right. Nevertheless, want to make a little comment. Um, I agree. In principle, such multifunctional systems, we just touch them a little bit, are much more efficient. Uh, Nevertheless, it's not, I don't want to turn back the story. You know, people looking at what we do, they say, hey, they are dreamers, maybe they want to turn back to the Middle Ages and all these things. Not at all. We want to have electronic devices for transmitting, at least at the moment, messages. I hope one day when we become really independent and we start developing in this new phase the large capacities which are still in our system, brain system, we may one day communicate uh, like they communicated some in the past by transmitting ideas. Yes, it may happen without technical meanings, but this is philosophy. Let's at the moment stay pragmatic where we are. We have a second problem. And the problem is, for me, the sharpest problem. Because the world functions as it functions at the moment, there must be the production, there must be the marketing, and there must be the benefit. coming back. If not, this machine cannot run. And now we come and say, we want to create complete, step by step, it will take some time, complete independence for the people living in such a solar power village, or call it Earth House village. It's nice. And the people with their different talents, because it's so multifunctional, we touched biology, we touched optics, we touched building, find their jobs in producing and maintaining also, these are technical systems you will have to maintain their own systems. But this means that if this is accomplished, they have everything they need: energy, food, water, medicine, which is also a part of the biology. You can produce medical plants so nice in such greenhouses we spoke about, in this intelligent one. Hey, they are no longer big clients of the international marketing system. This is a big problem, because they will be considered as enemies of the system. And I think, Scott, this is very serious. I thought a lot about if one day, and we should realize this with many nice people thinking the same way, such as that. Some people came to me and said, hey, you are really a dreamer, huh? Because the first thing you will see, they will bomb it out. I say, who is they? I think it will not happen, because what we have to do is not going dogmatically. No, I'm not coming and dogmatically saying this. I say, see, we are in a stage of the development of humanity, which is a real tipping point. Many say, finished, we will finish, we will have a nuclear war, we will. And if we don't have this, we are pulling so slowly around that the climate change will at least bring much down our life quality. And so many will die by starvation. And it will touch first the poorest, what we can see. We with our money. Okay. So
But I think, what you're doing, just to interject, is that if we create something that really works so well, and it's very clear how to build the thing, people will just adopt it. It will just happen. You don't even need to build it for them. I mean, if their lives depend on it, people will figure out a way to build a Sunpulse 500 on their own if you give them the plans. So I think that's kind of where we're at now, is that
many other things, and we will talk about it. I agree. What I wanted to say, not being dogmatic, but nevertheless convinced that we want to have this independence without cutting us out of the world. We will still, from time to time, like to have a big voyage, and I don't know. We have interference, we are not separated. But if it is done in so that we are really satisfied and we no longer have to work, as I said, I think time, the time, individual time every human has, is the most precious we have. And if we spend 80% of our daytime with jobs we don't want to do, to buy other things, how could it be that we start thinking about next things? How to have really peace amongst us? How to come away from the uniformity of science only, not accepting that arts and other life activities mix in a complete new multicolored system. And if we do this in the right way, we should, or people visiting such a village, without you give them any dogmatic saying you have to do this. They must observe that the people living there seem so happy. And the quality of life is good. And once you can show that the quality of life is really good, again, with a lot of tolerances around them, then what I can observe, at least, I'm an old guy now, but I can see all these young people who really want to look for something. They are not satisfied by what we have. They see it and they want to have models, living models. And then they will come and say, we want to do similar, we want to learn, can we do this and this? And it will this will be the moment where the Homo sapiens, I said at the beginning, we had to survive, and still we have. But once we come in an equilibrium, and not one for the next 100 years, I mean for the next 4 billion years with the sun cycle, then we can start develop what the next stage, what humans are, I think, brought up for thinking, making art, making philosophy, being compassionate, starting to realize, what are we doing there?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. It's like we just have to take care of this basic practical foundation, feed everybody,
Yes.
shelter for everybody, clothing for everybody, and then people can move upward.
That's good. To tell you the truth, I'm at the end of, so I hope I can do some years, but this is a task which will take decades now. And it is so important that we create such activities, living examples. At the moment, I'm not sure. I can see there is a lot of attention, but to speak in terms of atomic physics, the critical mass is not sufficient. Not for an explosion, but for an implosion. Huh? That means we have to combine these things. We have not to be a specialist here and there. Specialists come together and build this. And therefore, again, as we said sometimes, that 60% of resources spent and energy is in the building sector. It's quite evident that this is the center, but it must be equipped with systems making it complete. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I hope we can find a way to do it. And that is for me the most frustrating, how slowly things move. In development, it's always so. You start something and it's an illusion to think that on a perfect computer simulation system, you sit now here and you develop the perfect system. These systems must, of course, we must use these wonderful instruments of simulation, nothing against, and sensors and all. But we have to work and to realize and to live and to ask the women who should be in the kitchen for cooking with the sun, is this the right dimension? To ask the architects, hey, as physicists, we would have this wall. They say, you are crazy. You will not be able to live in something. You must have this form, this space. It's this exchange we need. And we have to create it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We definitely need to it's like we need to release the brakes. We have so many things kind of in our way. And I've been just like you, I've been waiting patiently and trying to do everything I could do to move into action. So it's very exciting to me to just meet you, because it's like we're on the same page. We're ready to move forward in action as much as we can now. And we just have to do the best prototypes we can produce, create these things, and then they will expand as we begin to use them.
Yes, and let space for the coming generations. they will add, and it is abundance also there. There are so many possibilities we don't see at the moment, we don't use. And those are the most interesting if you combine them. And it works.
Yeah.
I think that's what I wanted a little bit to tell you during this session. We are nearly 1 hour, but if you have another question, and we can have continuation if you want, and we have to meet and we have to see at the details and make a plan. How can we really, speaking is nice, huh? That is most hard. If you would be philosophers, you are satisfied just by talking what you wanted.
Well, I think this session is great, and it's important for the audience also to people can hear where you're coming from. They understand your philosophy and why we need to do this work. And it would be great to do another session. We can get into some of the more technical aspects, because I think there are a lot of youth out there, they maybe don't have access to this kind of information, and we can explain some of the technical aspects, and it's very inspiring to students.
And it's very important, because they could say, hey, another bullshitter, he's telling this, he can tell me everything. It must be nailed down to practicability.
Yeah.
And this is, sometimes with the friends I have, they have other opinions. They believe if we sit together and make strong philosophy, then by itself, it will change the world. I think it's very important to have common discussions about the targets we are going, our inner director, I call it. But nature is not so great, so gracious to us. These are ideas, and this is coming from our inner world. This is, you could even say, this is the non-materialistic world of ideas. You can do everything you want. You dream you are even in a tenth of a second on Mars. We don't need Elon Musk to transport us.
Yes, it's true.
But if we want to have order, and if we want to have energy, we have to change this more spiritual power we have into hard facts. And let me use my last example how I see this.
Mm-hmm.
I see this like a sculptor. A sculptor stands in front of a rock, solid rock. And he starts thinking, what can I hammer out of this rock? In his mind, he can hammer everything possible out. But when he wants to realize it, he has to destroy the rock in a way to bring out his realization. And now I make a big jump, maybe a little bit risk as a statement. If you go in quantum physics, in the quantum world, you have superpositions, as far as we understand it, of every thinkable thing. The moment, and this is described by the so-called Schrödinger wave function, as a mathematical tool, which everything is in it. But the moment we realize one thing, and be it a simple pot of coffee, the wave function is collapsing, and we just cut out this. And this needs energy, and this needs sweet, and it is really work. So coming from the world of ideas to the world of material, you need to work, and then you need to like working. Okay. And that's what I consider you. I have seen your movies, and I liked it. I liked especially in one of the movies there's a little guy, I think about 4 or 5 years old or so.
Yeah, yeah.
In rapid motion.
Yeah.
I like it. That's
Yeah, we
exactly.
we build with the whole community. Sometimes we have the little guys help us too. It's great.
That's what I like the most, that realizing something.
So I want to ask you before we go today. So of all the inventions that you've come up with, and I've realized over the years, at first I just knew the Sunpulse and the envelope power greenhouse, but then as I've listened to your lectures, there are many options. There's a lot of ways to do things, and using
Yes,
your combined heat and
yes,
power, and you have the stirling engine can make cold, and it can make hot, it can pump water. So everything, it seems like you may have arrived now in 2022 at like your favorite or what you feel is the most promising set of systems. And what is that now? So I can focus myself and my studies on that.
yeah. First, I think I told you is that together with was Andres, an industrialist from Switzerland, high-tech company. He has a heart for Africa, and I convinced him that we produce in Portugal, where we have nearly the climate, at least in summer, what I call a TTT center, Technology Transfer and Training Center. At the moment, we are a little team, but growing, and we are building up exactly what I try to explain, such an exemplary village. So I think we should speak about this the next time.
Yeah.
And, just comes to my mind when you said yes, but for stirling, you need, of course, a lot of metal. Also, we have not only imagined, we did the first development again, not in Portugal, but in a little R&D company I'm associated with in Germany. We could build a beautiful stirling engine with a corpus of adobe and with nearly no metals, with membranes inside, and something really exciting. My dream would be at a given time, we come together in Portugal, and you say, hey, Jurgen, I have a group of people around me, and I would like to come to see you and try to give excitement of the different possibilities so that the different persons in place from the different with different talents start uh, doing by themselves and conviction. This is for me the process. It doesn't help too much if one, two, three individuals build something. We have like an avalanche of people must
Mhm.
be attracted and doing
I see. I see. Okay, well, that's good to know. Well, I wanted to let you know also that I was meeting with some investors just yesterday, and
it.
I presented about your technology as well. And I told them all about you and what you've done. And I'm really promoting that set of the solar power village as something we could use for off-grid neighborhood developments. And there's a lot of people interested in that these days. So we'll see what they say, and maybe I'll connect you with them, and you can do your own presentation as well. Uh,
Yes, and Scott, if you could do, uh, you know, not that I want to limit this, but if you could look for people, possibly investors need, they have money, but that they really have a real heart and that they have children and that they are doing this especially to give a better chance to the children they love. If this is the case, and of course, want to make some money is not forbidden in the starting phase of this, but the target toward the better living conditions of their children and of those who are in the real misery. So
mhm.
this shame, my father talked about the shame that we could not, having all these possibilities, realize the simplest thing that we are living in such high standards. And on the other side, we are selective. We are not looking at it. If we would see the children in Somalia dying starvation or in other places, we could no longer sleep. or should give us the impetus to do exactly in the direction things we are just discussing.
Yes, I agree. Definitely. I mean, that's what motivates us. We need to take care of
Mhm.
the whole group of humans on the earth as one village. Everyone needs to take responsibility and see that we're all connected, definitely. But
Exactly.
yeah,
So let's this be our final words this time, and let's stay in connection. It's a big pleasure for me to meet you, Mr. Henry.
equally. Thank you again, Jurgen. And
Thank you.
we'll do this again.
Okay.
I appreciate
Take care.
you. All right. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Oops.